We're going to start by looking deep down in the earth. I talked about 660 kilometers down. I didn't just choose that as an arbitrary figure, but there's an area down there, 660 kilometers down. Okay, we want the cutaway of the earth. We want the cutaway of the
big
earth.
one? That one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we go down, let me just grab my trusty thing here. 660 kilometers. That'd be embarrassing if I missed. We come to what is called the mantle transition zone. And down there is a substance called ringwoodite. It's a type of rock.
Cool.
Yeah, and nobody had ever seen ringwoodite, ever, up until a few years ago. But all scientific theories make predictions, and if it's a good scientific theory, the predictions will eventually be seen to come true. And that was the case with ringwoodite. They were sure that it must exist, but 660 kilometers is a long way down underneath the ocean, so you can't go down there to check it out. So nobody had ever seen ringwoodite. Then somebody was examining a diamond from deep underground in Brazil, and in the diamond they found a tiny little bit of ringwoodite. It was microscopic. It's not much bigger than a bacterium, but there's a bit of ringwoodite in there, and it was just like they thought it would be. Ringwoodite, well, you know that all chemicals have a structure. All chemicals have, like a chemical like water is hydrogen, 2 hydrogens, and 1 oxygen. Okay, so that's one of your simplest chemicals. Ringwoodite is put together, so all chemicals are put together having a formula, like H2O, or, I don't know, let's pick another formula. Let me just write down this. I always want to write a formula on the board. Let's try CaSiO, and we'll throw in some aluminum, and we'll call this a 2, and that a 2, and that's an 8, and that's called anorthosite, and that is a type of felsic rock which comprises the crust on the far side of the moon. That's what the far side is made of. On the top, the near side on the top is mostly basalt, so they're 2 totally different kind of rocks. Now the thing with ringwoodite is, like all chemicals, it's not only a mixture of different things. Let me think. Ringwoodite is, I'm just showing off now, I admit it. MgSiO4. That's what ringwoodite is. Everything down there is that. That is basically olivine, which is that gem known as what, peridot or something like peridot or something like that. It's this olive green gem. Well, that's a mixture of magnesium and silicon and oxygen with maybe a bit of iron thrown in. So if I was going to get really fancy, I'd throw a bracket and say it was Fe, but I'm too lazy to get up. So that's a chemical formula. My point here is that all chemicals have a shape. They have a structure. They have a 3D structure. And ringwoodite has a 3D structure that allows it to trap water, except that it can't trap water in the liquid form. The water has to be split up so that it becomes a hydroxyl or a hydroxide. That's an OH. So it's really simple stuff, really, honest to God. You take water, that's H2O, 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. Just take 1 hydrogen out, you got HO, or it's often expressed OH. That's a hydroxide. It has a form called a hydroxyl too, and that is what ringwoodite has got a structure that allows it to trap water in the hydroxide form in itself. And they figure, they, being scientists, that there's between 1 and 3 oceans worth of water in that ringwoodite 660 kilometers down. Just think of the implications of that. 3 oceans worth of water stored away in the ringwoodite. It's not, I had a hell of a time getting my head around this. I mean, I even wrote to Louis Zucchetto, head of the physics department, hoping he could explain it to me, right? Because whenever I think of water, I think of a liquid. It's hard for me not to think of water as a liquid. But this water is in there in a hydroxide form. It's not a liquid, it's not a gas, and it's not a solid. It's in some kind of in-between state. And if it's going to become liquid water, then you're going to have to reunite it with an oxygen. But there's oxygen everywhere, so that's not a problem. But most of the oxygen that is, up until recently, up until 500 million years ago, all the oxygen on the face of the well, no, up until 2.5 billion years ago, but basically 500 million years ago, almost all the oxygen was locked up in rocks, like there, magnesium, silicon, and oxygen. Do you know that the biggest part of rocks is oxygen? Do you ever looked at a rock and thought, hi, oxygen? But that rock has more oxygen in it than anything else. It's got more oxygen than iron or calcium or sodium or even silicon. The second biggest thing is silicon. But it's got more oxygen than anything else. So just, that's what I'm trying to get my head around with this chemistry thing, right? The bugbear of my existence. Yeah, I just looking forward with horror to having to explain anything to do with chemistry. Brings back these hideous memories of me at SFU in that chemistry lab and all these people in the white coats walking around with beakers. And I'm sitting there thinking, geez, I'm really a fish out of water here, right? I don't have a clue what's going on. All these other people are writing up equations and they got their little beakers and everything, and I'm out of it, eh? But I'll tell you one thing. The science department had the best Christmas parties that were ever invented because they had this alcohol. And I used to play up at SFU, so I used to get invited to all the parties, and I was on the students' council too. So, and I'm telling you, I was at parties with the dean. You get invited to all these big shot things, but the best parties were the science labs. They had these great big jars, inverted jars, and with a valve at the bottom. And one said, I don't know, innocent punch or something like that. Then another one was like regular alcohol. Then there was another one that was stronger, and then there was another one that had like pure lab alcohol, which apparently is 99 point something, but can't quite be 100% alcohol. I had to explain, but of course I didn't understand it, but it's as close to 100% alcohol as you could get. And man, those were really good parties. They really rocked, I'm telling you. So all I can say, if you ever meet a science denier, I've been there, I've been in those labs. Those people were my friends. This is real stuff going on, real science and real alcohol, believe me. So that's ringwoodite. So down there is this ringwoodite, and this ringwoodite has in itself 1 to 3 oceans worth of water in a non-liquid form. And what is being hypothesized then, to bring this to a close, is that functions as part of a huge water cycle in Earth. So that on Earth you've got the oceans. Just see how small the ocean is if you compare it to and that's not even to scale. Okay, to scale, those globes that everybody used to have in school. I thought they were the coolest thing. They had you could run your hand over it, and you had all these mountain ranges. You see where the Himalayas were and the Rockies. Well, you know what? If that were really to scale, if that globe were really that big, and you ran your hand over it, you wouldn't feel a thing. You wouldn't feel a thing. Tallest mountain on Earth is Mount Everest, 8,848.84 kilometers high. That's 29,031 feet. That's Mount Everest. That's as far as anything goes. And if that were to scale, you wouldn't even feel it, because the Earth is pretty big. The Earth is 12,756 kilometers if you measure it through the middle. If you measure it through the middle, I'm not talking about circumference, I'm talking about diameter. Measure through the middle, it's 3,756. If you measure it from top to bottom, it's 12,722, I think. Anyway, I did the difference, and there's a difference of 50 or so kilometers, depending. Why am I talking about that? It's not
I
even
don't
important.
know.
Okay, sorry. I just thought it was interesting. Anyway, so help. What was I talking about?
You were finishing off with ringwoodite, darling. There's
Okay.
1 to 3.
Thanks.
How the water was
Okay, you've got the ringwoodite. It's got all this non-liquid water stored in it. There's the ocean up top. My point was that compared with the size of the Earth, the mountains are nothing. Mount Everest at 29,000 feet is nothing when you consider that the diameter of the Earth is 12,756 kilometers if you measure it through the waist. That's all. That's the only point I was trying to make. We covered your basic rocks, ringwoodite. Just a little, Molly, I got to tell you, last time I mentioned something I thought was really interesting. This. Have you ever addressed what this is?
Yeah, our nictitating membrane.
This is the Plaquia semilunaris. And what this is the remnant of when we had a third eyelid. And we, along with various reptiles, mammals, and other creatures, had at one point, when we were back evolving from fish, we had a nictitating membrane that would function as a third eyelid and close the entire eye. Now, I pointed out last time that animals like falcons still have them, and they use these nictitating membranes as little windshield wipers to keep their eyes clear as they're diving down after the pigeons. The most thriving population of peregrine falcons in the world lives in big cities, and they live on pigeons. So it's perfect. It's perfect. Falcons almost became extinct because DDT was killing off all the large raptorial birds in North America, like eagles. I remember back in the 1970s, there were only about 400 eagles left in the United States. There was a bunch up in Alaska, but in the continental, they were almost gone. And so they banned DDT because DDT caused a chemical reaction in the birds, which meant that when they laid their eggs, the DDT interfered with the shell forming of the eggs. It interfered with the ability of the eggs to metabolize calcium into the shell structure. And so when those falcons or eagles laid their eggs and sat on them, they just went like that. And that's why they were becoming extinct. So they banned DDT. And when they did, the birds started to come back. And the falcons, which were almost extinct all over the world, BC, Canada, proved to be a key area where people came and were given special permission to get falcon eggs and take them all over the world and hatch them and try to bring back the peregrine falcon population. And one place where the peregrine falcon population came back really well was in New York City. So you've got all the skyscrapers. What is a falcon like? A falcon lives on cliff faces and way up trees and stuff like that. Nothing could be better for falcons than all these great big huge skyscrapers. Plus the fact that people brought pigeons over. Those pigeons are not native to North America has many native pigeon species. It had one called the passenger pigeon. Have you heard of them?
Yep.
The passenger pigeons were the most numerous bird in the world. There were literally billions of them. They literally covered the skies when they flew over. People writing back in the 1800s talked about how when a flock of passenger pigeons went over, it darkened the sky for 3 days. That's how numerous they were. Now, there are none. We killed them all. The last one, named Martha, died in a zoo in 1929. That was the last passenger pigeon in the world, if you can believe that. Anyway, I think I mentioned that in regards to peregrine falcons, because there are no more passenger pigeons, but there's a ton of other pigeons, European pigeons. They're called rock doves. They're the ones you all know. And they're the ones that pigeon fanciers work with. And they were a huge influence on Charles Darwin when he was formulating his theory of natural selection. Because he looked at artificial selection and thought, same thing's gonna work in nature. Just gotta figure out how nature does it. Anyway, so that's your nictitating membrane. Those are peregrine falcons. Peregrine falcons have made a huge comeback. And they're big in New York. They're flying all over the place in New York. I just love it. There's these pigeons down there, and all of a sudden, New York City, out of the sky, 320 kilometers an hour, passenger pigeon, the fastest thing in the world, hits the pigeon. There's a ball of feathers. Oh, it's just great. Anyway, I just love seeing things like that come back. That's what a nictitating membrane used to do. All right, so we finished all that, done albedo. So the point with the albedo that I wanted to stress was that once something like ice gets a hold, it reflects so much stuff that pretty soon it can't help but reflect so much stuff that the temperature goes down. So the carbon and the carbon cycle is the way that the planet Earth has regulated its temperature ever since the beginning. It takes a few million years for it to work because the carbon has to be taken out of the atmosphere, into the ground, down to the ocean, buried in the ocean, turned into rock. Well, first it has to be made into little shells by sea creatures, and then it gets turned into rock, and then it gets buried, and then it heats up, and then it melts, and then it comes up as carbon dioxide. So that's the carbon dioxide cycle. And they think, because of the presence of ringwoodite down there, that there's also an ocean cycle, and that the ocean gets recycled on a long-term but regular basis. Water goes down, water eventually comes back up. Where does it come back up? Let's have a look at those mid-ocean ridges, can we? I can't remember what the number is offhand.
Do you want the actual picture of I've got this one here. There you go. I got this one here, and I also have, oh yeah, this will be the one.
Okay, so, yeah. Except I wanted a map too to show where they were. But in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge.
You mean it? Oh, sorry. Sorry,
That's how our solar system is going to end.
Sorry, go ahead.
Our solar system is going to end in 5 billion years. Our sun will inflate and become a red giant. What's going to happen is it's going to quit turning hydrogen into helium. It's going to start converting helium into carbon. And that's a very short-lived phase. When it starts trying to do that, it takes a lot of energy to do that. The sun is going to blow up into a red giant. It'll come out as far as Earth, maybe. It'll incinerate most of the solar system, and that'll be the end. Except we don't have to worry about it because Earth will be uninhabitable by that time anyway. You know why? Because the sun, which started out 30% less powerful than it is now, is getting stronger all the time. So the sun was only 30% as strong when the Earth was first created, but it's 30% stronger now. And it's getting stronger every billion years or so by 10%. So before too long, it's going to be so strong that it will boil away the oceans. So in under 1 billion years, it will boil away the oceans. Once it boils away the oceans, then you won't have any subduction anymore because it takes water to lubricate the subduction. So first of all, the subduction is going to stop. There'll be no more recycling of carbon. It's going to get hotter and hotter, and the sun's going to boil the oceans away. The electromagnetic field that's around us is going to disappear. Well, what's going to happen is all life on Earth is going to become extinct. I mean, no easy way to say it. So we've got under 1 billion years to get our act together. I figure a few hundred million years, a few hundred good million years, really, right? This is the best time to ever be on Earth. When was the last time you saw an asteroid come flying through the sky? Well, not that long ago, but they weren't really big. Right now, we got 4,000 to 10,000 asteroids a year hitting the Earth. That is, anything bigger than a golf ball is considered an asteroid hitting the Earth. Every 2 centuries, we get one the size of a football field. When we get one the size of a football field, we get, you wouldn't want to be in the immediate vicinity. But that's not nearly as big as the one that landed, that killed the dinosaurs, right? But that was only 10 or 15 kilometers wide. So something the size of Merritt, not much bigger, took out the whole world. It killed all the dinosaurs, one of the most successful species of life that has ever lived, and annihilated just about everything else while it was at it. That was just one 10 to 15 kilometer asteroid. But there were a lot more of them in the past. So I can't guarantee one isn't going to show up, but there's none on the horizon right now. So what's the end of our solar system? We're all dead. What's the end of the universe? Well, the universe is expanding, and it's just going to keep on expanding. I just love watching Brian Cox do that on BBC. What's the matter, dear? You look distressed. I know. I'm not getting very far, am I? No, I'm not doing well at all. I'm sorry. Okay, well, forget that. There's your Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Okay, just a sec. Where's my, there it is. Pooey. See, I hate getting distracted like this, but everything is so interesting that's what does me in, That's what's so frustrating, because I want to be straight ahead like a laser, right? Nothing is going to distract me. And I look at something, anyway, this is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And then what's happening is magma is coming up from deep down in the mantle, and it's going this way, and it's going that way. So it's forcing the ocean apart. And it's doing that all the way from there, all the way around. Here's the East Pacific Rise. Goes all around the Earth. It's the longest mountain range in the world, 65,000 kilometers. And you can't see any of it. It's all under the water. But that's what's creating all the new land on the Earth. The magma's coming up right along the ridge, and it's going that way, it's going that way. You can even see the lines, even though this is an artist's impression. And it's a good one. And so That's what made the Atlantic Ocean. 60 million years ago, this didn't exist because these two were right up against each other. South America was waged right up against Africa. You can see how they fit together. So 330 million years ago, those were all together. Then Wilson, the Canadian, came along. John Tuzo Wilson came along and said, what's happening is this is being pushed apart here and there. That's creating new land. That caused the continents to go apart. And this is recycling rocks all around the world over and over and over. It's been doing it for 4 billion years. And that's how we get our new land. And that's how Earth controls its temperature. So I just want to make sure that you understand about carbon. That carbon is the central atom for life, even more than oxygen. I mean, and yes, we need oxygen, but we've only lived in an oxygenic world for less than half the time the world has been here. Before that, oxygen wasn't a factor, but carbon was, and as far as I know, always will be. We talked about macromolecules.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
So if we weren't spewing carbon into the atmosphere, we would.
Oh yeah, right at the word. Yeah, thanks, son. According to the Milankovitch cycles, right now we'd be going into another ice age. Not right away, but maybe another 10 or 11,000 years, if all things were equal. So if the Milankovitch cycles were functioning like they used to before any life form was putting a huge amount of CO2 into the atmosphere, then we would gradually be cooling off and going into another ice age. Yeah, but we're not. You don't have to worry about it because we're heating the planet a lot faster than that. Heating it faster than we ever have. That's a scientific fact. I'm sorry. It's not politics. It's freaking science. Yeah, so macromolecules, we're going to be talking about those because we're talking about the emergence of life.
Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now, just a second.
You
Okay.
wanted to mention giraffes anyway, so that's
Well,
cool.
yeah, I was going to mention them, but that's a lovely looking molecule.
I know it's
That
gorgeous.
illustrates the fact that molecules are very complex. It illustrates the fact that, I'm just making this up as I go along, but it's true. Not only are they complex, but they also have shapes, and those shapes have to fit together. And that's how proteins work. Proteins, well, all molecules work that way. They have certain shapes, and if they fit together, great. If they don't, well, you're not going to get a chemical reaction. Anyway, yeah, macromolecules, 4 kinds, all right? You got to know them. Proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. Proteins, most important. More stuff is made out of proteins than anything else, so you've got to have proteins. What are they? Proteins are made out of amino acids. So you've got your more complex molecule made up of less complex molecules called amino acids. And those less complex molecules are called monomers. Lipids are made up of glycerol and fatty acids, and those are the monomers that make up lipids. Carbohydrates are made out of short chains of sugar. When you put the short chains together, they make longer chains. The short chains are monomers, the longer chains are polymers. Finally, nucleic acids, they're what make us us. Nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. And everything that makes me, me, and you is in the DNA. So we got a bunch of genes in there, and each gene is a section of DNA. And those sections of DNA are made out of little things called nucleobases, which fit together in such a way as to make a bigger molecule. And so this is what a bit of DNA looks like. I'm running out of board here, aren't I?
Do you want a
Okay,
picture?
let's
Do
take
you
this.
want a picture of DNA?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I just want to show you the basic idea, right? So here you got a backbone, and then you've got these bits. You got another backbone and a bit. And the bits are 4 types. Guanine, adenine, cytosine, and thymine. And I remember it, all teachers can go. Adenine always pairs with thymine, so this is adenine, this is thymine, and guanine always pairs with cytosine. So here we've got a guanosine, and here we've got a cytosine. And those are the monomers that make up DNA. And there are gazillions of those in us, and as you can imagine, with 4 different nucleobases like that, they can get together in a whole variety of ways. So there's a lot of plasticity in there. There's a lot of flexibility built into it. And the other type of nucleic acid is RNA, so that's DNA. That stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, which sounds big and formidable, but it isn't. All it means is a sugar background that's had 1 oxygen taken out, so it's been deoxied, right? Give me that oxygen, I've deoxied you. So it's got deoxyribonucleic acid in the background, and then it's got these 4 little different kinds of bases here. And that's, you know, I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but for now that'll do it. And you've got RNA, and RNA is half of that. It's a backbone, and it's got nucleobases. 3 of them are the same, 1 of them's different. The one that's different is called uracil. So uracil is now going to go with guanine. And basically what your body does is it's got this DNA packaged away in every cell, and that DNA contains instructions for everything that you and I are. Our hair color, our eyes, everything. How we're going to act, what kind of tempers we got, everything that makes us up is in that DNA. But that DNA can't do anything. Okay, it's got all the instructions, but they're just sitting there in the cell, not doing something. What the body's got to be able to do is translate that DNA into stuff. And so what it does, so the DNA makes a copy of itself. Then the RNA comes along and grabs that copy and makes a copy of that. So the DNA gets transcribed or gets duplicated into another DNA. That becomes the template that the RNA is going to work with. So the RNA then takes that DNA and it makes a copy of it, except it changes one of those 4 nucleobases. So it has now a uracil instead of whatever the uracil replaced. So the DNA gets copied onto the RNA. Then you've got a type of RNA called messenger RNA. The messenger RNA comes along and it grabs that code, which is what it is, that has been copied now, and it hustles it out of the nucleus into the rest of the cell, and it takes it over to a ribosome, and the ribosome does this thing where it reads it, and then it sends out instructions to another kind of RNA, and this other kind of RNA goes off, and it's been given instructions now, okay? It's been given instructions by this other kind of RNA. This RNA comes along, says, okay, this is what I want. So this other kind of RNA goes off, and it brings back these amino acids, because these amino acids are going to become proteins. And that's how we make proteins. Our DNA says to the RNA, go and assemble according to these instructions. And the RNA runs off, and the messenger RNA and the ribosomal RNA get together, they follow those instructions, and they make proteins out of it. And those proteins make our blood and our muscles and our guts and everything else. And that's how it works in a nutshell. So that's DNA and RNA, and that's why we're going to be talking about that kind of stuff now, about proteins and carbohydrates and nucleic acids, and that's what they are. Let's see, what else do I have to cover? Oh, okay. 2 kinds of particles, right? We got one kind of particle called a boson. We got one kind of particle called a fermion. And we're made up of fermions. They're regular atomic matter. Remember? They start with a quark. Put 3 quarks together, you get a proton. The proton gets together with an electron and it gives you an atom. The atom gets together with another atom to make a molecule. The molecule gets together with another to make a monomer. The monomers get together and form polymers. And the next thing you know, you've got a macromolecule like protein. And the protein's made up of amino acids, and the amino acids are put together by the RNA that's running around gathering here and gathering them there and putting them all together, and that's how we get the stuff in our bodies. Okay. Nobody's objecting, right? Passed unanimously. Carrying on. My point then is that there's 2 different kinds of particles. Now I want everybody to know there's 2 different kinds of life. And we're now going to divide life into 2 categories: eukaryotes and prokaryotes. And then, as we go along, the first life we're going to encounter is prokaryotes. That's the simplest kind of life. It's not simple at all. It's very complicated, and it's really a marvel of complexity. But prokaryotes are a lot simpler than eukaryotes. We're eukaryotes. We're big and we're complicated. Each one of our cells has got a real honest-to-God nucleus in it. And in that nucleus is our DNA. And that's why when that DNA is going to be replicated and being made into protein, that's why it's got to be delivered out of the nucleus into the rest of the cell to the ribosomes where it can be assembled. It's read, assembled, the proteins are made, and then we have stuff being made in our bodies. So we just need to know that. Here is a prokaryote. This is the simplest form of life we have on Earth now. All bacteria and all archaea are prokaryotes. But plants, fungi, animals, protists, and us are all eukaryotes. So it was nothing but prokaryotes probably for the first, that's a matter of intense debate. That's one of the things that makes it so hard to present this stuff. The easiest thing in the world would just be to get a text. I'd go through the text and I just make up these lessons and it'd be easy peasy Japanesey, honest to God, because it would all be laid out. The reason I didn't use a text is that you can't get one that's not outdated. The best one I found in this library, and it's an excellent text. If you open it up to about, I was going to bring it along and I forgot, so I'm sorry. But if you open it up to a certain page, it'll show these Ediacaran organisms that lived 550 million years ago, and it's got a great big picture of them, a painting, and they're green. My point is they couldn't have been green, because painting them green shows that the person who painted them thought that they were photosynthesizing. But they couldn't, because it turns out they were found a kilometer down under the ocean and it's pitch black. Nothing can photosynthesize down there. My point is that even the best books have to be out of date, because we've learned so much in the last 20 years. It's pretty hard to find a book with any information on science that's much newer than about, 15 years old or 10 years old. Even if it's brand new, the information in it is going to be old, because they couldn't get the most up-to-date information in it. So a little bit about the Ediacaran really threw me, and also the fact that according to the same book, there's no such period as the Hadean, because they hadn't even put it together as a real honest-to-God period yet when that book was put out, and that was in 2009. So it's not that long ago. So this whole first period that we're supposed to be talking about right now isn't even in the book, other than they mention it as a possibility. So that's how fast things have changed, and that's why I can't just present to you one easy version, because there's kind of an older version and a newer version. Now we're out of time, and I don't want it to be, because I'm not nearly as far along as I wanted to be. I feel I've been a horrible failure because I haven't got to where I wanted.
So you must remind them about an isotope, because it's going to be really important for next time.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about.
Just quickly mention what is life a little bit, a couple of minutes, okay?
Yeah, okay. Can you stay for an extra 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, let's do the what is life thing, okay? Or just quickly, I'll finish
But
this
just
off
don't
next
forget
week.
that. Does everybody remember what an isotope is?
Okay, there are 123 definitions about what is life. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to say that it is that which preserves, furthers, or reinforces existence in a given environment. What are some of its traits? Okay, well, one thing, it's got to be regulate its own internal environment. And we all do this. We shiver or sweat, and we maintain a homeostatic environment. Another thing about life is it's got to find a way to maintain its own identity and keep itself separate from the rest of the universe. That is done by means of cells. All things that are alive live in cells. So you may be thinking, well, what about viruses? They don't. You're right. And viruses are considered not alive for reasons we'll see. Metabolism. If you're alive, you've got a metabolism, and it's all those chemical reactions I talked about. The sum total of all those chemical reactions is your metabolism. What other things? It can grow. Okay, you think that's pretty self-evident, right? Well, let's take a look at those salt crystals.
What number is it?
I got 119. Let me show you something that grows and isn't alive. It's these. These are the world's largest crystals. The longest one is 39 point something feet, weighs 55 tons, and this is deep under the ground, almost 1,000 feet under the ground down in Mexico. And the temperatures down there are about equal to the hottest day ever in Death Valley. So that's why not too many people are down there. But my point is this, those crystals grow. They started out really tiny and they got that big. So you can't say it would not be a definition of life to say it grows, because non-living things can grow too. So we've got growth. It has to be able to respond. Okay, I'll end on this note, I think, because we are over time. Okay, so again, my humble apologies for taking so long to get to the point. Okay, I really was trying, and once again I failed. Oh man. Anyway, let's have a look at a sunflower.
Okay.
Because I want to illustrate the point that living things respond to their environment. And the reason that I got Denise to look up a sunflower is that this is just a simple example of how they do it. The interconnectedness of all life shows that we all use the same metabolic reactions. And I'm going to, next week, I'll illustrate two of them for you, photosynthesis and the Krebs cycle, just to give you an idea of how delightfully complex these things are. But I won't go into, I couldn't go into the amount of detail that I'd have to do it properly because it's too complex for me. But I'll break it down so you can get an idea of the complexity but not get too involved in it. Anyway, here we see different life forms.
Sunflower.
Our nictitating,
Sunflower.
okay, I'm just going to try to say that our nictitating membrane evolved when that thing crawled out of the water. That was 375 million years ago. And those are our arms in those front fins. But I want to end up on the sunflowers. If you're alive, you can respond to the environment. How do sunflowers respond to the environment? A sunflower stem has cells growing on both sides of it. It has a thing called auxins, which are hormones. And the sunflower's genes tell the hormones on the shady side of the sunflower to grow faster than the ones on the sunny side of the sunflower. So, in the morning, when the sun is shining from here, the cells on this side of the sunflower are growing faster than the cells on this side, and that is bending the stem. And that's why the sunflower faces the sun. And they continue to, by doing that, the sunflower gets many times more solar radiation than it would have got if it didn't do that. The other thing I gotta tell them about is the giraffes.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so you got a great giraffe picture here.
Yeah.
All right, giraffes evolved with trees called acacia trees. There's the acacia trees, there's the giraffes. So the interaction between giraffes and acacia trees has been going on for a few million years. Because what happened in Africa was back in the day, 3 or 4 million years ago, everything was drying out in Africa. Africa used to be lush. It used to be a nice place to live. It was quite green in most places. But about 2,000 years ago, it dried right out. That had been going on for quite a while. Anyway, Africa dried up and the jungles started to recede. And what was left was a savanna with trees spaced out like this. So the giraffes evolved to munch the trees. What the trees did then, I mean, they're not just going to sit there and take that, right? I mean, life has been an arms race right from the get-go. Make no mistake. It has been the most brutal arms race. If you don't make it, you go extinct, baby. And 99% of everything that's ever been is dead and gone. A lot of it we'll never even know that it existed because we'll never find any fossils, especially if it was little things like bacteria back, because they got nothing to preserve. They don't have teeth. You know? Anyway, the giraffes eat the acacia trees. So the acacia trees develop these great big huge thorns, horrible things. So what did the giraffes do? They evolved big thick lips to eat these thorns. So the acacia trees weren't going to take that lying down, which would be quite a sight. So what they did was they evolved chemical warfare. So the giraffes come along, they start munching the tree, and the tree responds by sending out a chemical message. And the trees pick it up on the breeze, and the trees all start pumping out tannins. And the tannins, it takes a few hours to do this, but the tannins get into the leaves and the giraffes are eating them. Ugh, it's horrible. But if they're hungry, they keep it up, and the plant keeps pumping out the tannins. And if the giraffe eats enough, it'll get sick. So it finally has to stop. But the giraffes have found a way around that because the plants communicate with the wind. So they send out these molecules float with the wind. The next tree, downwind, it senses it. They got receptors in their leaves, like stomata. And it senses, gets this chemical message, starts pumping out tannins. What if the giraffe walks in the other direction? And that's what they've learned how to do. They graze upwind, into the wind, so that when the plants are releasing these chemicals, it doesn't get affected. Thank you very much. I'll stop on that note, and we're going to continue with what is life at the beginning next to you. So thank you very much.